Hi guys, second part of your video. So this time we're looking at supply side fiscal policy, looking at this in a little bit more detail. Just in terms of your notes, this is the area of your notes you should be looking at. For me, it is on page 77. Okay, let's make a start if we can. Okay, in terms of supply side fiscal policy, what are the things that you guys have to be able to do? You've got to be able to explain that fiscal policy can and should be used to achieve policy objectives. Think of those 4 macro objectives. We're operating on the supply side in the longer term as well. So just in terms of this, we need to look at examples before we do that. Taxation and aggregate supply. Remember, changes in tax rates and tax allowances can have both a direct and an indirect effect on both the short run and the long run aggregate supply. So in terms of this, if this can reduce costs for firms, it may have an impact on the short run aggregate supply, but if it can actually entice more workers into the economy, if it can entice more capital investment, more entrepreneurs and so on, then that is going to improve the productive capacity of the economy and shift that LRAS curve outwards to the right. Now, in terms of capital spending, we've seen that actually influences both aggregate demand as part of C plus I plus G, okay, as well as the long run aggregate supply curve. If you guys remember, going back in time, around 25% of investment spending in Britain is done by the state. Okay, and obviously with that in mind, whether it's broadband, whether it's the amount of motorways, whether it's the amount of ports, this is going to improve the productive capacity of the economy. Okay, little example here, taxation and research and development. In terms of what the government has done, you can see in orange there are tax incentives, and basically what's happened, and more recently in the budget, the government has basically said that if firms invest, okay, that will be taken off the tax that they would have been paying in terms of corporation tax. Okay, and so as a result, it's incentivizing firms to invest. Okay, let's have a little look at your notes. So for me, it's moving on to page 78. Certain things that the government can do. One of the things that it can do is have a benefits cap or cut, and just in terms of recent times, this was introduced by the coalition government back in 2013. What you need to do is consider the impact on the incentive to work and the size of the impact of the workforce. Okay, so if you hold benefits or cut benefits, what impact would this have? Okay, and really what you're looking at, we're looking at the supply side. Okay, which direction does the LRAS curve shift? Okay, have a quick go at deciding that. Okay, pause the video for 20 seconds, have a think about it, and then press play again. Okay, and just to show you that this did hit many people, sort of not just who didn't have a job, but also those people who did have work and were getting some form of benefit as well to supplement their incomes, because their incomes actually weren't high enough. So just in terms of what this looked like, it should have been an outward shift in the LRAS curve. And in terms of the key benefits here, what you guys should have here, let me just pull that down a little bit, that's better. Okay, the positives, this leads to a rise in GDP, likely employment, because we need more workers to produce that higher level of output, a fall in inflation, which may improve price competitiveness, and as a result of the trade balance, and we may also get a reduced budget deficit. Now, there are downsides to this. Okay, this is going to take a long time to take impact. You can announce a benefits cap, but people aren't going to react straight away. Okay, it may lead to greater inequalities, and also it's unlikely to work in a recession. Okay, if you cut benefits in a recession that push people or incentivize people to work, but there are no jobs, then this is less likely to work. And you can see in green underneath the diagram, my little writing there, the fall in benefits leads to an incentive to work, which will increase the long-run aggregate supply curve. It makes voluntary unemployment, people who choose to be unemployed, less affordable, and most of the evidence shows that there aren't that many people in that position, despite what the tabloid press say. Pushing on. How would you change this if there was a cut maybe in income tax? So in terms of a cut in income tax, well, that would impact on aggregate demand because we know consumers are going to have a higher level of disposable income, but actually it might push people also towards working more if their post-tax disposable income increases. So how would that actually change the picture? The long run aggregate supply curve shifts outwards to the right. You can see my writing, my explanation at the bottom. Fall in income tax leads to a rise in disposable income and a fall, and as a result, a rise in consumption and aggregate demand. It also increases the incentive to work, which will lead to a rise in aggregate supply. Now, there's an evaluative note there on the right-hand side, which you guys need, and that's basically, you can see that real GDP increases and employment is likely to, but actually whether the general price level falls, stays the same or increases depends on whether the shift in AD is bigger, smaller or equal to the shift in AS. If the shift in AS is bigger, and I've drawn it in this instance as being bigger, it would actually lead to a fall in inflation. In this instance, actually, I would probably go the other way. I'd be quite happy if you drew your diagram with the LRAS2 much closer to LRAS1, and actually that there would be an increase in price, because I think the impact on consumers is going to be greater, the impact on spending is going to be greater, then it leads to a rise in the incentive to work. So tweak your diagrams or your explanations in that regard. Positives, you can pause the diagram and you can write those down. In terms of cuts, cuts in taxation, just remember a cut in income tax may also improve incentives for people, but it may also increase tax revenue. So just having a look at a tax rate below T-star, if the government increases the tax rate, which is along your horizontal axis, so if you're operating before T-star and the government increases taxes, tax revenue will go up. However, if the economy is, if the tax rate is already beyond to the right of T-star, if government increase the tax rate further, then tax revenue will fall, as shown on the vertical axis. So if they want to increase tax revenue, they need to pull the level of tax rate back if they're already to the right of T-star. Let's push on. This is a proper past paper question, which will give you guys a nice bit of practice and a bit of challenge. The question reads, with the aid of a Laffer curve diagram, explain this view. And you've got in the budget there, April 2000, it states the rich face a new 50% top tax rate on earnings above 150,000 a year. The Institute of Fiscal Studies, however, has stated that it is unlikely that the government will raise any money at all from increasing taxes on high income earners to 50%. And you're asked to explain that view with the aid of a diagram. Pause the video, give yourself 6 minutes. Draw the diagram, work it out, and see if you can explain it. Hopefully you've had enough time. The 50% by inference is already beyond T-star. So if the government were to increase taxes any further, then obviously actually the government may not raise any money at all. It may actually fall. What's the explanation? High tax rates can lead to a lower tax revenue, and you use your diagram to explain that, and then you give some reasons. This could be because of increased tax avoidance, the use of accountants, tax havens, and so on. Okay, we need to push on quickly. In terms of capital spending, if there's an increase in capital spending, such as on infrastructure, telecommunications, broadband, and so on, this is going to be shown as an increase in investment. Lower corporation tax can also do that. Okay, you can see some really important points on the bottom right there. Potentially high multiplier effects from these multi-billion pound projects. This is going to increase aggregate demand. It's going to increase jobs. Okay, with better infrastructure, then actually it may start to improve investment into the country from foreign firms as well. Okay, and all of this is going to increase the long-run productive potential of the economy. Again, this is partly what Boris Johnson's been talking about in terms of reducing this north-south divide. So more money being spent in other parts of the country. How would we show that? Very similar to the last diagram. Draw this in again. Okay, and there is your impacts. So the positives, the rise in aggregate demand, rise in GDP, employment, the positive effects throughout the supply chain. Likely to be an increase in tax revenue, increase in productive capacity of the economy, will reduce inflationary pressures and make Britain more competitive on price, but it depends on whether the increase in long-run aggregate supply is greater than the increase in aggregate demand. Okay, so a key evaluative point. It also depends where the economy is initially operating and the competitiveness of other countries. Note, there's going to be a long delay in this. Okay, this isn't going to happen overnight. These projects take years to build. There's an opportunity cost to taxpayers there, and this is against this current backdrop of austerity, where we have huge budget deficits potentially. Okay. Other key things in terms of entrepreneurship and new business creation. Government can support business startups, can support an entrepreneurial culture, and that might be through startup grants or cuts in taxes. In terms of research and development, again, this can be encouraged via tax cuts, which is going to lead to greater innovation and increased competitiveness internationally. And you can also do this through increased education or training spending, such as apprenticeship, all of which will increase the workforce skills and productivity. Now, why do these increase the long-run aggregate supply of the economy? Because think about what we've been talking about. All of these lead to either more labour, more capital, more enterprise, or they make those more productive themselves. Okay, just in terms of modern apprenticeships, last one for you guys. Okay, similar diagram again. Okay, there's government spending, so aggregate demand increases, aggregate supply increases because workers are going to be more productive. Whether or not inflation actually goes up or down will depend on the size of the shifts, but there's definitely an increase in real GDP and likely employment. So the impact is different depending on the different types of spending here. This will improve worker skills, employability. Very important, these words, highlight them. It will close skills gaps and shortages. It will increase productivity. It will make firms more competitive. The increase in aggregate demand, as we said, because of more government spending. But there's a risk of government failure in training if policies are not effective, if it's the wrong type of training. Note the time lags. These will only work in the long run, and also they're not likely to work in a recession when demand for labour is low. The impact is dependent on the size of increase on the size of increase in spending on education and on its quality. Okay, so I hope you guys have had a super insight in terms of the impacts and how you draw these, how you analyze and how you evaluate these. Okay, really interesting lesson, how we can adapt the modern world and what we see in reality to the theory. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks all.